Good morning. Well, today kicks off the last week of trading for the financial year here in Australia. And so far, well, we've seen our market doing quite well. We're just off 10.5-year highs. We are expecting high volumes this week as a lot of people will be closing out positions, whether it be tax losses or tax gains for the end of the financial year here in Australia. Last week, we actually had our market listing its best week since September 2016, up over 2% at the end of trade. Now, if we have a look at what happened on Friday, we did see the European markets moving higher, but there were some concerns about the banks in the European system and also concerns about the auto players on expectations that we might see the US creating a tariff around 20% on any European cars that are made and imported into the US. So we had some of those auto players again losing momentum, not only in Europe but also in the US. We continue to see some weakness coming into the banks, and that was on the back of the Federal Reserve handing down their latest bank stress test results. 35 of the largest banks, whether they be the big guns in the US or the minnows, coming through and beating the stress test. This means that they have enough capital on their books for the worst case scenario. But we did see a bit of nervousness because this week we'll have the Federal Reserve handing down their decision as to whether these banks can go ahead with their current buybacks or even look at their dividend positions. So we'll see a little bit of nervousness over the week in that banking sector. We did see that JP Morgan was one of the worst performing stocks on the Dow, with the broader banking sector in the red. Also, the technology sector a little bit lackluster on Friday. The Nasdaq was down around 20 points at the end of trade. But if we have a look at the Dow, on the flip side, up 119 points, with the broader S&P 500 just slightly stronger. The Dow, after 8 straight days of losses, reversing those losses on Friday, but a lot of the enthusiasm and gains coming through in the energy sector. Although we did see DuPont and also McDonald's, two of the better performers on the Dow, with GE also rebounding as the day's trade went on. The reason why we had the energy sector moving higher, well, we had the news coming through from OPEC and the non-OPEC meeting, which everyone had been waiting on. Now, they did come through and say they would be expanding their output, lifting the amount of oil and energy products they're pumping into the international markets, but only by 1 million barrels a day, which is very low compared to the averages that were floating around. So the oil price moved higher. The oil price in US dollar terms up around 5.7%, back to 69.28 US a barrel, helping that energy sector and many of the broader sectors that play into that industry. The gold price on Friday at 1,271 US an ounce. Over the weekend, we had the news that China's People's Bank of China has come through and said that they're lowering their ratio requirement rates by 50 basis points for their larger banks. And this is going to come into effect from the 5th of July. So this will be something that will be a negative for the Australian markets today. Having a look at the Aussie market, well, at the moment we're set for a 15-point slide at the start of our trading day. And looking at the Australian dollar, also a little bit lighter on in the morning session, 74.40 US cents.